Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor podcast. My name is Brandon Drum.
My name is
Parker Thune. And this, good.
Did you hear it?
No.
Dang it.
Probably because I talked right. You said, yeah.
Yeah, you did talk right. It did.
I screwed it up. It is powered by ollipop. Proud sponsor.
Sorry that none of you heard the satisfying opening of an ollipop can. It's grape today. My favorite flavor. It's delicious.
There you go. And if you want to go get an ollipop or a 6-pack or whatnot, you can go to Walmart, you can go to Target, you can go to Whole Foods, and you can go to Sprouts, right?
That is correct.
Correct.
Those are the 4 Oklahoma retailers at which you can pick up ollipop. If you're listening from out of state, I'll be honest.
Marketplace, probably in DFW, HEB, probably something like that.
Well, at this point, look, Ollipop's a $200 million company. They're in stores in states all across the country. So wherever you live, odds are there's a can of Ollipop not far from you. Or you can just go order online. They've got a new flavor, ginger ale, flavor number 15 in their repertoire. I have yet to try it, but I'm a big ginger ale guy, so I'm looking forward to when that first shipment hits. CHAMPU20 is the promo code that you can use on drinkollipop.com to get 20% off your first order. Cheers.
Yep. Thank you, Ollipop. All right. This is going to be a big podcast. I mean, the white whale has landed in Oklahoma. David Stone committed to the Sooners on Saturday night, 5-star defensive lineman, the number 10 overall player in the country. And after what we saw on Saturday night, I am willing to bet that dude moves up. He won the MVP of the Bash at the Beach, was the player of the game, all that type of stuff. Had a phenomenal performance. There was a point in time that he not only strip sacked, he had back-to-back. He had a strip sack. Obviously, St. Joseph recovered. And the very next play, he sacked Samaj Jones, obviously former Oklahoma QB target, and former silent commit to Oklahoma, according to what I was told. That's kind of funny. At one point, yep. I was told that by multiple analysts that live up in that area, that it was Oklahoma, until Cincinnati won out. And they got a good one. Samaj Jones is a good player, but David Stone is now committed to the University of Oklahoma, moved Oklahoma up to number 10 in the Rivals rankings. I believe Oklahoma is number 11 in the composite rankings, which if things keep trending with other targets, Oklahoma has a chance to have a top 5 class. They legitimately do right now. And that's kind of wild to say. Back-to-back potential top 5 classes, who knows? Regardless of the fact, we've got a lot of content coming on all of those targets. And OU season, it's kicking off right here this week. It is football time in Oklahoma. And that means that it's 60% off. And this is the final day. If you're listening to this on Monday night, when this is supposed to drop, you can go to ouinsider.com. You can go click up to sign in or sign up, and you can put in promo code kickoff23, and you can get OU Insider for a full year, for 1 year, for just $39. $39. It's usually $99.95 for a whole year. Nope. And that's if you sign up monthly. Annually, I think they pay like $108, $110 or $20, $120, I believe. So on average, it's $108, but you get it for $39. $39. So it's worth the price of admission. There's thousands and thousands of OU fans already on there. And we would love to have you join a very, very fast-growing community. All right. Let's talk about David Stone. Let's talk about the commitment. Let's talk about Parker. That was a nerve-wracking deal. Look, for those that don't know, he told Oklahoma on Monday he's probably going to be Sooner. And as the week went on, Miami started moving the needle a little bit
You don't say.
NIL. Yeah. And they threw out a huge amount of money. And from what I'm told, Oklahoma, Todd Bates, the collective at OU, everybody really pulled together, and Oklahoma did what they had to do to keep the phenom, the quasi okay preps. He played 2 years in Oklahoma. His whole family lives in Oklahoma. His sister goes to OU. Like, this is an okay preps kid. This kid is an Oklahoman to the T, and he loves the state of Oklahoma. And for Oklahoma to pull that off, to hold off that run, was just unbelievable, Parker. Like, and OU fans are now confident again, and that recruiting can go their way. It's kind of weird. Like, Jaden Johnson made them confident.
Jaden Jackson.
Devon Mitchell made him confident. And then the Williams Winery stuff happened, and you can't recruit, they can't do this, they can't do that. And then David Stone, a couple of weeks later, goes their way, and now everything's back to normal. Life of a Sooner fan is a roller coaster, an emotional coaster.
Life of anybody that follows college football recruiting, really. Unless you're Georgia at this point, you can have whoever you want. Apparently, except for Williams Nwaneri. But look, for a lot of Oklahoma fans, they were going to have to see the Sooners land a 5-star defensive lineman before they were going to believe it. Now, as we recall, Oklahoma had a 5-star defensive lineman committed in the 2022 cycle in Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, but then you have the staff turnover, Calvin Thibodeau's not retained, and Brownlow-Dindy flips to Texas A&M. And so you had a 5-star committed at one point. He just didn't sign. 2023, PJ Adebawore at the edge position. He ended up a 5-star, but he wasn't a 5-star when he committed. And so that was even a less ballyhooed recruitment than would typically be the case for a player of his stature because his rise came so late. David Stone has always been considered one of the top 50 prospects in the country. And more recently, he's been considered one of the top 10, top 20 prospects in the entire country. He's the number 1 defensive tackle in the nation, according to our folks at Rivals. And he was the one guy, Brandon, we talked about this for months. He was the one guy in this cycle that Oklahoma absolutely had to have, no excuses whatsoever. Didn't matter how you got him, you had to get him. Because how often do you see a kid at a position of need where you have a monkey on your back as a program, and suddenly you have a kid at that position 20 miles down the road that grows up a Sooner fan, is all in with your institution, and oh, by the way, he's also a 5-star, one of the best in the nation, not just at his position, but overall. And so it was the perfect storm of circumstances, which meant Oklahoma had to capitalize. Otherwise, folks were not going to be happy one way or another. Folks were not going to be happy about the outcome if David Stone was anything other than a Sooner. And Miami made it interesting. They did. But I think if nothing else, this restores the faith for a large majority of the Oklahoma fan base that follows recruiting. It restores their faith in Brent Venables and in Todd Bates and in this Oklahoma staff to be able to land elite talent all across the board, not just at a single position or a small contingent of positions. Because look, when Lincoln Riley was the head coach, you were used to landing 5-stars on the offensive side of the ball. That was a pretty regular occurrence. Defensively, and Oklahoma's not accustomed to landing 5-star talent. It hasn't happened, at least not in recent memory. And it didn't take long for Venables and his assistants to flip that narrative on its head. They landed not 1, but 2 defensive 5-stars in the 2023 class. And now here they are with 1 already on board in David Stone in the 2024 class, and the chance to add another 5-star or 2, the chance.
Oh, okay. You were done. Okay. I didn't know. Yeah, no, they have it. They do. They're not like, you got Taylor Tatum on the offensive side. You have David Stone on the defensive side of the ball. So now you've got 2 5-stars in your class already. They do have a chance. And I think people also need to understand is that there is potential movement from some players. Like maybe it's a ridiculous statement, but I kind of believe Danny Okoye has that chance. Like, he could go and let's say down the road he commits to Oklahoma. He will be visiting Oklahoma this weekend for an official visit. By the way, the 4-star private school, Noah Jaguar, out of Tulsa, defensive end. And he's a player that has so much ability and talent. Like, he's a freak show, right? Just an absolute freak show. He, to me, has that ability to be a 5-star at some point, just because I feel like he has that type of upside. Now, I get that he's not going to be playing the competition that maybe you need to go up against to earn that moniker from maybe some of the national guys and the rankings committee, whether it be at Rivals 24/7 on 3. I understand that. But if he goes and does what I think he can do against like whatever All-American game he decides to play, I can't remember if he's going to San Antonio or Orlando. I don't remember.
I believe it's San Antonio.
Regardless. Yeah, regardless. Which one is David Stone going to? Is he Under Armour?
I think he's Orlando. Yeah, I think he's Under Armour.
I think that's kind of the given if you play at IMG because they're an Under Armour school, right? Yeah. So that kind of makes sense. Regardless of the fact, like, doesn't matter. If he goes and dominates that weekend, that too could help him move up, obviously. And we saw that with Josiah Wagner last year, Makari Vickers, who's another PJ Adebari, even though he was already like number 20 or 30 or something like that at one point, he ended up being like number 7.
Yes.
Or 6 when it was all said and done.
That week was the week where all of the national guys that hadn't seen PJ Adebari with their own 2 eyes went, oh, he really is that dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is why I say maybe when the last rankings come out, Oklahoma could have 3, 4, 5-stars because look, Devon Mitchell took a hit when he moved to the 2024 class. But has anybody been paying attention what that cat has been doing since the season started? He's been putting on a show. And he's not going to stay 80th or whatever he is with Rivals. Like, that dude's going to start creeping up in the rankings. Like, his age be damned. Like, that kid is going to start moving up. And so there you go. You got another guy that could potentially, you land Grant Bricks. He's a potential 5-star when it's all said and done. If you can somehow pull off Jordan Seaton, which he wasn't even talking to me. He was talking to national guys, and that dude is talking up Oklahoma like crazy right now. And obviously it has a lot in his teammates are Jaden Jackson and David Stone. Those are 2 of his best friends.
IMG connection right there. And Jordan Seaton, let's give him his due here. That is the number 24 player in the nation for our Rivals rankings. Not the number 24 offensive lineman, the number 24 player.
Yep.
Number 24 player.
And so we're sitting here naming off all these guys. And obviously Oklahoma's trying to make us take a stab at Dominic McKinley. I talked to some people this morning, and they actually think they have a chance. I'm like, this is not. I want OU fans to understand this, Parker, and help me out here. Do you all remember the days when getting a top 250 defender to commit was like a huge deal? Just a huge deal.
Heck, that was 2022.
That was 2 years ago. That was 2 or 3 years ago. That was 2021 was the last time that was a big deal. Obviously, 2022, they were recruiting at an elite level even before Riley left. They had some 5 stars. They literally had Marvin Jones Jr. silently committed to them, and he was taking a visit to announce his commitment to Oklahoma prior to, literally was coming in for an official the day after, or the day of Lincoln Riley announcing he was leaving. They had to call it off. Like, I remember getting a phone call from a source and was like, dude, Jamar Kane just had to call and tell him not to come. Like, yeah, that was like, the kid was going to commit on campus. And so they were recruiting at an elite level. The coaching change slowed that down. Obviously, you lost Gabriel Brown-Ladini, you lost Marvin Jones Jr., you lost Derek Moore. 3 top 100 players on the defensive line. That was a big hit in that 2022 class. Fast forward to 2023, and you've got PJ Adebawore. Obviously, you had Derek LeBlanc before he transferred. And just on the defensive side of the ball in general, Peyton Bowen, Josiah Wagner, Makari Vickers. Like, I'm trying to think of everybody that was Sammy Omasigo, Phil Picciotti, Lewis Carter. Like, all those guys were top, 150 players in the country that I just named. And you start to see it trend differently. And then obviously in 2024, the building blocks, and then you add the transfers. So the defensive recruiting has changed. Now they're young right now on the defensive side of the ball in 2023, that with the guys on campus, they're young, super talented though, super talented. So there's going to be growing pains, but they should be better on defense. You bring in a David Stone to add to our Mason Thomas and PJ Adebawore and Grayson Halton, and who else am I missing here that's young on the defensive line that has a huge upside for Oklahoma? And Jaden Jackson, obviously. Taylor Wine. Yeah. You add all that together. And OU fans should be smiling right now, because there has not been a defensive line in the last decade that has that much talent on it. 2024 will be it may be young, but it'll be the most talented defensive line. If all things hold together, the most talented defensive line that Oklahoma's had since 2014, 15, maybe 2015, 2015, probably with, I'm trying to think of, oh my gosh, if we weren't talking about it, the guy that set out the Orange Bowl because of a concussion. He didn't really have he didn't want to risk it for the NFL. You know what I'm talking about? The defensive tackle. He was like a 3-star out of high school at a DFW area. Oh my gosh.
Jordan Phillips?
No, he was 2014. That 2014 D-line was really good too. Obviously you had Charles Tapper. You had Charles, oh my gosh, now I'm driving myself crazy here. But anyways, that 2015 defensive line was the last group that had a bunch of NFL dudes on it. Hasn't happened since. It just hasn't. They've had guys here or there. They've had a Neville Gallimore who was a freaking dude, right? That guy was a star. But remember, he was close to being a 5-star at one point. He obviously fell a little bit as things went on, but he was close to being a 5-star. He was highly rated. Kelvin Gilliam is still going to be around. He's going to be young. He's going to be finally, I guess, a retro sophomore, junior, something to that extent, 2024.
Retro sophomore, yeah.
Retro sophomore. So they have talent, and it's going to be super young, super like Halton, Gilliam. Guess what? They were 4-star. Gilliam was a top 100 guy or top 150 guy in the country. Yeah, PJ Adebawore, R. Mason Thomas, like these are all 4- and 5-star guys. David Stone, Jaden Jackson. That's Parker. That's different. That's different, and they're not done. You throw Danny Okoye in there if they get lucky and get him. If they somehow got lucky and flipped some guy that's committed to Missouri, I'm just saying because they're still recruiting him. I mean, you can't just say it's over with. Or if they went and got, obviously you're going to have potentially Nigel Smith on that as well. Like everybody kind of feels it's leaning towards Oklahoma, right? And trending in that direction. So that is the youngest, but yet probably the most talented D-line Oklahoma's had in how long? A decade almost?
It's been a minute.
Remember what happened the last time they had that type of D-line? What was Oklahoma ranked in defense that year in 2015? Does anybody remember? I do. They ranked 28th. When's the last time that happened? Oh, well, you know what? I may be speaking out of turn here because the 2020 defensive line was
I was
pretty
going to say, I
special.
think 2020 was in the same ballpark.
Yeah. Ronnie Perkins, Perrin Winfrey, Nick Benito. Yeah. Forgive me. I always forget about the COVID year. Yeah, that and they were a top 25 defense that year too. But I think the point is when you have defense that's that talented on the defensive line, you tend to be pretty freaking good with overall defense. Like that's where it starts and ends, in my opinion. Secondary looks good when the defensive line's good. The linebackers look good when the defensive line's good. Everybody looks good when the defensive line's good. Pretty fair statement?
I would say so.
So having said all that, what are you hearing on Dominic McKinley on your side?
Yeah, it's just, look, there have been a lot of predictions that have flown in favor of Texas. And I think especially with the knowledge that the decision is coming down Friday, we can safely conclude that it's OU in Texas, which has kind of been the vibe for a while now. The question was
I've heard A&M a little bit too.
The question was always, okay, as this drags out, does LSU make some headway? Do they get back in the race? Do they start to assume front runner status? And if he intends to commit Friday, I just think LSU is out of time. And needless to say, look, that's an in-state 5-star kid. That's not somebody that they're going to give up on until signing day. But heading into the decision, OU and Texas are the two schools that have positioned themselves well, positioned themselves better than the others for McKinley. On some of the intel right now, I would lean Texas, but I'll add this, Brandon. There was another defensive lineman who a couple months ago, if you'd asked either of us where he was going 4 days before he announced, we probably would have said Texas as well. That one ended up going in Oklahoma's favor. So there's time for this thing to change.
Jaden Jackson.
Exactly. There's time for this thing to change. It seems like a good old-fashioned Red River shootout on the trail, though. And we've had a few of those this cycle. When you think about Jaden Jackson and obviously more recently Eli Bowen. Heck, we haven't podcasted since Eli Bowen committed out of nowhere. On Thursday evening to Oklahoma. So it was a banner week for Oklahoma on the trail, because not only do you wrap things up with David Stone, but on the front end, you had Andy Bass and you had Eli Bowen.
And both of those guys are like, I don't care what anybody says, man. Andy Bass he's him. Like I've seen the guy play multiple times in person, and he does everything well. Like that's just what he is. He's a great athlete playing football. He's a football player, and his throwing motion is so much cleaner this year. Like if I'm Jeff Lebby, I don't care what you have to do. You've got to find a way to put a package of him at Wildcat and just let that dude cook, because him at Wildcat is a problem for people. Number one, because he's a 10.5, 100-meter guy, like literally time 10.5. And he is thick. I mean, the dude he's probably going to weigh close to 200 pounds by the time he gets to Norman. Like
he's already over 200 pounds.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's thick, man. He's a big dude. And I'll tell you this, he's taller than what people give him credit for. Like you and I, he's not as tall as you and I, obviously, but
no, he's right about in that 6 foot range.
Yeah. And but he doesn't look that tall until you walk up to him. I was like, gosh dang. Like I thought he was going to be like to my chin or something like
Like
that.
Gavin Freeman size.
No, man. Yeah, I thought he was going to be Gavin Freeman size, but I mean, even if he was, who cares? The dude's he's a phenomenal athlete. He's a freak, and such a huge pickup. But with the Eli Bowen, like you watched what he did this past Friday, interception, batted the ball up in the air for another interception, stripped the ball, several tackles out in space, a tackle for loss on a blitz. Like the guy has a football IQ of a savant, and he's a special. And it sounds weird when you say, but he has the best set of ball skills I've ever seen in my life. Like the guy just knows how to make a play on the ball. If there's somebody that's going to make a play, he's going to do it. He's got the speed. He's got the smarts. He's not the biggest at like 5'10", 5'10 and a half ish, but he's still really good. He reminds me of a thicker, more athletic Josiah Wagner.
And
He's been pretty good since he showed up to Norman.
Yeah, I was about to say, if the Josiah Wagner comparison doesn't already carry enough weight, just wait. I imagine many folks will be listening to this podcast tomorrow, Tuesday, after the depth chart gets released. Yeah, when people see where Josiah Wagner is on the Sooners depth chart tomorrow, then that comparison will certainly hold all the more weight then. And it was funny, I was talking to a DFW source over the weekend, and they're like, man, people do not realize how good Eli Bowen is, because his ball skills, and it was that exact same thing, Brandon, the same thing you mentioned. They said his ball skills are so much better than Peyton's. And again, his older brother was a 5-star safety, the number 2 safety in the 2023 class. Anytime you're talking about little brother being so much better in any capacity, so much better than his older brother, 5-star football player, top 20 national player in the country. Anytime stuff like that is being said about somebody like Eli Bowen, look, I don't care how, and there have been plenty of fans that have made comments on message boards and elsewhere that are knocking Eli Bowen for his height. I'm sorry, like if Eli Bowen's height is what turns you off, that's lazy. Flat out, that's lazy, and you haven't done your research. You haven't watched film. You haven't actually paid attention to the type of football player that Eli Bowen is, because, yeah, he's 5'9", 5'10". He's also an absolute dog, and there is nothing that he can't do at that size. We're not talking about a Buki Radley Hiles here. We're not. We're talking about somebody that, much like his brother, plays bigger than his listed size, is completely fearless, and for whom the game just comes easy. The school record holder for interceptions in a single season at Denton Guyer High School is Eli Bowen. As a sophomore in 2021, he picked off 10 passes. This kid's a very good football player, and he's got a very bright future at the University of Oklahoma. And 2-3 years in the future, he and his brother will be anchors for that Oklahoma secondary. There is no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Like a couple of years down the line, you have Bowen out there, and you got McCullough.
Man, that's
true. There's a potential reality to it all, right? It's kind of weird. Very weird. You know, we haven't heard a whole lot of Day McCullough, right? Like there hasn't been a ton of talk.
And to a certain extent, that's to be expected. He showed up in June. Like we haven't heard a lot about somebody like Sammy Omosigho either, but that certainly hasn't changed my opinion on the type of player Sammy Omosigho is going to be. And so Dave McCullough's got time. With how deep they are at safety, he doesn't need to touch the field in year one. He doesn't. In fact, he might be better off not touching the field in year one.
Oh, yeah. So I want to on the Dominic McKinley thing, like I was just exchanging a text with a couple people, and they seem to feel like Oklahoma's like quietly in it. And there's some people around Norman that kind of feel this thing could go in their favor, but at the end of the day, a lot of confidence with Texas and Texas A&M. Weirdly, I don't. It's kind of strange that both of those two schools seem to. When I was just texting with an A&M person I know, and they were like, "Yeah, A&M seems to feel pretty good about it." And then a Texas guy said, "Yeah, well, Texas feels good about it." And I literally asked, I said, "Hey, does anybody know if anything's been done? Like, it's a concrete evidence if he's leaning one way or the other?" Both, no. So, and I said, "So what do y'all think about Oklahoma?" They're there. They're trying to make a move, but nobody is really sure because of how close he's kept things. And he did come out and say he's going to surprise some people with his decision. So David Stone said the same thing. And obviously not a lot of people were surprised. I think the surprise was that it was chalk. You know what I mean? Like status quo. But
Sometimes the biggest shock is no shock at all.
is no shock at all. Right. Yeah. And I don't know how I feel about the Dominic McKinley thing. Like my gut says it's not Oklahoma. Like I just don't. And if I'm wrong, I will come on here and say, guess what? I was wrong, and I'm glad I was wrong for you OU fans. But I don't know, man. Like it just doesn't feel like it's trending. At one point, Oklahoma felt like they were the leader. And so I'm almost kind of confused at maybe like, and this is where my mind is. So tell me if you follow me on this Dominic McKinley thing. So you have David Stone and you have Jaden Jackson already on the inside, right?
Yeah.
And there's a source that I talked to that's, and you know this source actually, and they told me one day sometimes too much good is too much good, meaning that landing all the guys that you potentially could have is too much, and it could get in the way of things. Well, I think this may be a case that Oklahoma was in a really good spot with him. But you have David Stone, you have Jaden Jackson, and you potentially have Nigel Smith. And those three alone on the interior, to me, is enough to make a Dominic McKinley go, that's a lot of talent for me to have to compete with. And I'm not saying he doesn't want to, he's not a competitor or anything like that. But even the most competitive human being in the world is going to look at that and go, okay, so they have Grayson Halton, they have Kelvin Gilliam, now they have David Stone, Nigel Smith, and this is assuming Nigel Smith commits, and Jaden Jackson, and whoever else they bring in from the transfer portal, right? Like that's a lot for anybody to wrap their head around. Like, how am I going to get on the field? Like the ways for me to get on the field are a lot harder there than they are at this place or this place. Now, obviously, when you say A&M and Texas, you know there's a lot of talent on the inside and the interior there. Texas A&M just landed how many 5-stars in the last 3 cycles?
Yeah, but you
on the interior defensive line.
Well, you talk about too much talent.
Too much, yeah, and they've lost some. So that's my deal with that's where I'm also kind of with the A&M going, I don't know, like that doesn't sound right. Texas makes sense because yeah, they've got some dudes, but they're nowhere near what Oklahoma and A&M's pulled in. If Oklahoma's 24 class stays the way we think it's going to stay, so that's where my head's at. And then you have Ohio State there as well in that, and LSU, which I don't think LSU is as big of a player as And I say that, and you watch, he's going to end up staying in state just to shock everybody. But yeah, it's a weird deal. Let's talk Grant Bricks. Did we talk about Grant Bricks?
We have
Did you talk
not talked about
Bricks
Grant
already?
Bricks.
Okay, let's talk about Grant Bricks and Jordan Seat,
Okay, let's do it.
and then we'll go to Okoye, and then we'll talk Arkansas State and OU and close it out.
Gotcha.
Go for it. Go Grant Bricks.
Yeah, look, I'll be candid. The longer this drags out, and it's now dragged out beyond the anticipated timeline, Bricks had said he would have liked to commit before his senior year as long as he felt confident in his decision. Well, his season opener came and passed, and he doesn't feel confident in a decision yet. It's OU and Nebraska. At this point, Kansas State is no longer in the picture, nor is Alabama. So those two schools, it's OU and Nebraska. And in all candor, the longer this drags out, the better things look for Nebraska being close to home. And it's kind of the same vibe as the Michael Bogonowski recruitment, right? It feels like Oklahoma is kind of recruiting against the clock here to a certain extent, because in both cases, the longer the decision takes, the more likely it is that they stay with the school that's geographically closest to home. For Bogonowski, that's Kansas State. For Bricks, that's Nebraska. And so I know folks, sources in the building at the Switzer Center still feel pretty dang confident that they're in the lead for Bricks, but it doesn't seem like there's that same swagger as it pertains to the Bricks recruitment that they had at the end of July when he was fresh off that unofficial visit. Because I think at the time, the Oklahoma staff felt that, okay, within the next couple of weeks here, he's going to make a decision, and he's going to make a decision for Oklahoma. I think it is refreshing to know that Kansas State is no longer in the picture, because Kansas State had been a thorn in the Sooners' side in that recruitment. And there was a lot of reasons for a kid like Bricks to appreciate a place like Kansas State. He's ag. Kansas State is ag. They were his first offer. That's a winning program that's fresh off a conference title. And it's only about 2.5, 3 hours from home for him in Western Iowa. So the fact that you were able to forge past Kansas State, I think, is a big, big plus. The question is, can you forge past Nebraska in order to lock down this kid, especially if it lasts into September? He's only got to drive an hour to Lincoln for game days, and Nebraska starts winning. And Matt Rule and that staff really have some juice in year one. At that point, understandably, I think a kid like that who operates on kind of a different wavelength and has a pretty small bubble in terms of the things he's seen and experienced throughout his life and his community, it makes a lot of sense for a kid like that to play for Nebraska. It does. And I won't pretend that isn't the case. But by the same token, Bricks has acknowledged to me with his own lips, look, I know I can get the best development at Oklahoma. That strength and conditioning program, they're elite. Jerry Schmidt, man, he's as good as anybody in the game. So he understands what Oklahoma has to offer. And I think it's a classic case of the tension between the head and the heart, Brandon. Bricks' head, he knows in his head, OU is the best opportunity for him. But his heart isn't 100% there in Norman, Oklahoma, at least not yet. So that's the mountain that Bill Bedenbaugh and OU have to climb if they want to be able to close out this recruitment. So again, this is what I'm going to stay on top of. I talk to Bricks and sources around his recruitment on a very regular basis. So I will stay apprised of any developments here. But my feeling on this is that Oklahoma's window is shrinking. I still favor them for the moment, but I would say the same in this case as I would with the Bogonowski recruitment, which is if you can get the kid to make a decision in September, you got a really, really good shot. You're probably the favorite. If the calendar turns to October, that's where I start to get super skeptical.
I think, and we keep kind of moving the goalposts with Bogonowski a little bit. And no, I'm going to say that, and also add that the reason why we were able to move the goalposts and it's really not much of a deal being made of it is because, one, they expected themselves to be done with the decision in August. It just didn't happen. The kid just couldn't make a decision. So now they're going to take a visit to Oklahoma and one to Kansas State and see, which of the games, which of the atmosphere, game day do they prefer and all that type of stuff. And I mean, they'll be there in Norman this weekend. I think it's big for Oklahoma to handle this really well and to almost make, I guess, the Bogonowski family feel as if the decision of not picking Oklahoma is, you can't say the wrong one because I don't think you can do that knowing their background with Coach Stannard and the K-State staff and all that. But I still feel that there is an opportunity for Oklahoma to make a massive jump. If you go out there and you see the safeties are performing well, the cheetah is making plays, two positions that Bogonowski could be very, very vital in for Oklahoma moving forward into the SEC. That's got to say something to you. And then maybe the comfort, of just knowing some of the players. I know he's really comfortable with a lot of the players at K-State, but I've also been told he's very comfortable around a lot of the players, and Norman has become pretty close to him. Yeah, the fact that David Stone is probably in his ear quite a bit as well, I would assume. I mean, he's been all over Twitter after everybody since he's committed. It's almost, you could kind of almost see like it was a weight lifted off of his shoulders, that now he can publicly recruit the way that he's been wanting to recruit. He's been doing it silently. Now he can publicly do it and make a bigger deal out of it. So we'll see. I think this is a big weekend for Bogonowski as well. It's a big weekend for OU and 4-star edge Danny Okoye, who we talked about a little bit earlier. Oklahoma and Tennessee seem to be just butting heads. Texas and Alabama are trying to get in there and get their swings a little bit. This official visit could be huge. And there's a chance, and according to what I'm told, Oklahoma has some pretty big plans for him on this visit. So there's a chance Oklahoma could jump way out in front. But being out in front after the first official visit isn't that shocking. That's normally what happens. Can they hold off Tennessee, Texas, Alabama down the stretch? Because I do think that, and source told me this, probably has told you the same thing, they are trying to get Okoye back multiple times before he makes a decision. I think for them, ideally would be to have him back the weekend before, if they have a home game, the weekend before he announces, get him back on campus and see where it goes from there. But he's a big personality. I can see him just shocking the world and going like, yeah, screw it. My mom wants me at Oklahoma State. I'm going to go to Oklahoma State. And he's never visited there or done anything like that. That's just who Danny is. Like he's off the cuff. He's wild. He's different. And you just kind of deal with it and just let it happen because he's a great kid. He just kind of walks by his own beat. Essentially, that's just who he is. And that was just an example, people. I do think it's OU, Tennessee. Texas is trailing behind that. And he's going to unofficial visit Texas. He visited them officially. He'll do that later on this month. He's going to official visit Tennessee later on this month as well. We'll see how the rest takes place. As far as Jordan Seaton, the IMG offensive tackle, number 24 overall player in the country, 5-star, he's coming in on September 30th. And I talked to him after the game, and I haven't wrote about it on OU Insider yet, but I talked to him after the game, and he said that David and Jaden have been in his ear constantly for like ever. And he actually told me this at IMG. media day as well. He's like, they have been in my ear forever. So OU fans, you take that for what it's worth. Like the kid just flat out told me that, but that's something you can't ever really report stuff like that because one, if I report that and then Stone goes to Miami, it just looks really stupid. So you kind of keep that in your holster a little bit. But yeah, he's told me that twice now. And from what I'm hearing is there's a chance that both Jaden and David, he says, could be up on September 30th with him on that official visit. If that happens, if you're an OU fan, you've got to kind of be like, okay, there's maybe a reality that if they don't land bricks and they end up with Jordan Seaton, okay, that's not a bad trade-off. I don't know. I mean, they both could arguably be the top tackles in the country, right?
Yeah, certainly. If you get look,
could you imagine if they landed both?
Well, and like consider for a moment that Oklahoma is still very much in play for Eddie Pierre-Louis too. So,
there we go. That too. Yeah.
Daniel Akinkumi is coming on an official visit this weekend. Bill Beatonbow, man, like that dude's doing some fishing right now.
Yeah.
And he's got more than a couple nibbles on the hook.
And OU's NIL game is a lot. Like the coaches are doing their thing and they've always done their thing. But that's what we've been trying to tell you guys is like, look, they're recruiting at an elite level, but sometimes when NIL gets in the way, it doesn't matter how good of a recruiter you are.
Yeah. Well, and I think
doesn't.
Yeah. And there are two of those four, Bricks and Akinkumi, where NIL really isn't going to dictate the outcome. It's not. With Seaton and EPL, there's going to have to be. Yes, there's going to be some.
Oh, I can tell you for Seaton, 100% that is. Yes, it's NIL.
Yes. So there you go.
Look at who he's visiting.
Both of those guys.
They're all big NIL teams.
Yeah. Gonna have to.
So, and I think South Carolina leads for him. By the way, I just want to make that clear that he's a DMV guy. Beamers and DMV, they're hard to beat. I mean, there's a reason why Oklahoma, when Shane Beamer was in Norman, was just raking in dudes from the DC area and the DMV area. Like it was easy pickings for him, essentially. And I think that's helped Oklahoma keep all those pipelines there in that area. But it's not as easy as it once was because Beamer's not on staff. But I still think South Carolina is probably the leader, but Oklahoma, I was talking to people that cover that region. Like, no, Oklahoma is definitely a major player. Like the kid literally loves Coach Beatonbow and thinks very highly of him. And he has a lot of close friends that are going to be going to Norman. So why not make that trek or at least give them a chance? So I think the visit on September 30th is going to be big. Wow, we talked about Bricks, Bogonowski, Seaton, and Okoye very quickly. Let's talk about some football. It is football time in Oklahoma.
That it is.
They had the assistant interviews today, and I don't know what to think of it. I mean,
there was not that much bulletin board material that was generated today. Let's just put it that way.
What did you get from those interviews?
Not a whole heck of a lot. So, I mean, look, and that's to be expected. They're playing Arkansas State this week. Mm-hmm. They're playing Arkansas State this week, and there is no depth chart that's been released. So, what can you do?
So, there is buzz at one of the corners that Gentry Williams and Josiah Wagner have been battling it out, and some people feel Josiah Wagner is going to be the starter. Some people feel Gentry Williams is going to be the starter. I don't know what to think, to be honest. Like, I wonder if it's just going to be an or thing.
It could be an or thing. Could very well be an or thing.
Because one, Josiah Wagner's had shoulder problems since arriving. Like his shoulder keeps being dinged up a little bit throughout fall camp. And I wonder how much that plays into, how much it's like maybe he starts, but Gentry gets more reps just because Gentry's body is bigger and he can hold out longer. I mean, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how all that's going to play out. We know they're going to rotate quite a bit. It's going to be 105 degrees outside. you're going to see a lot of the depth getting reps. And one would assume that you're going to get to see quite a bit of the young 2023 guys in the 2023 class get a lot of reps, particularly on defense. Because I think offense is they're a lot older. There are a lot of juniors and seniors that can play, particularly juniors, sophomores and juniors, I guess I would say more than anything else. So defensively, I think you're going to see a lot of the younger guys play, which I don't think is a bad thing. Do you, Parker? After you get that yawn done?
Yeah, no. I don't think it's a bad thing at all if you see a lot of defensive, because I mean, you got to think about this too. Based on the things we've heard throughout fall camp about so many of these youngsters on the defensive side. Yeah, like it's clear that there are more than a few that showed up to Oklahoma ready to compete and play ball at a high level. And it's going to be hot. It's going to be a lopsided outcome in all likelihood. There's going to be plenty of rotation happening on both sides, but especially defensively, man, I think back to what a guy like R. Mason Thomas did early in the season last year, or gosh, I'm trying to think of another good example. Maybe it wasn't early season, it was midseason, but CJ Colden and the rise up the depth chart that he experienced, man, like really what this Arkansas State game is, because the outcome is not in question, right? It's not. What this Arkansas State game is going to be is an opportunity for especially some of those younger contributors on the defensive side to strut their stuff and earn maybe 4 or 5 more snaps next week than they otherwise would have. And as we've seen with Venables and his coaching staff and the way that they do business, you make plays. It's almost a biblical principle at play, right? He who is faithful with a little will be entrusted with a lot. And Ted Roof said it, I think said it very succinctly and very brilliantly today in his press conference. He said, look, our philosophy is those guys that have earned the right to play are the guys that are going to play. And so what are these younger guys going to do, especially the younger guys that have already got a strong foothold on their spot in the depth chart, like Josiah Wagner and Peyton Bowen and somebody like PJ Adebawore or Lewis Carter? What kind of an impact can those guys make this weekend and throughout non-conference play such that they're starting to see the field a little bit more once Big 12 play rolls around? Are they starting to eat into the snap count for some of the veterans? And likewise, if you're a veteran and you are a starter, well, these first 3 weeks are a proving ground for you to establish that there is separation and there is margin between you and some of the second and third team guys that are going to get plenty of run and are going to be given more of an opportunity to make plays than maybe they will in October and November.
Yeah. So of all the guys that we feel that are going to be playing, here's what I think we should do real quickly is the depth chart. We know free safety. I bet it's going to be, I would assume Reggie Pearson, and then Key Lawrence will probably be 1-2, right? And then you'll have strong safety, Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, 1-2. At Cheetah, it's going to be Justin Harrington, and then Deshaun McCullough. At middle linebacker, it's going to be Danny Stutzman and then Kobe McKenzie. At wheel backer, it's going to be Jaron Kanig. Who would be the other wheel backer? Who would be backing him up, do you think?
Honestly, Lewis
You think
Carter.
it's Lewis Carter?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Yeah, Lewis Carter.
Which, by the way, if Justin Harrington is indeed number 1 on the depth chart at Cheetah tomorrow, good on that dude, man, because
right
he's been through a lot. And
Mhm.
yes, he's put himself through some of it, quitting the team mid-season in 2021 and hitting the transfer portal and having to earn his way back when he didn't find any takers. But man, for all that guy's been through and all of the flack that he's taken, somewhat deservedly so, from for his play on the field on Saturdays, for that guy to have a freshman All-American transfer from Indiana and essentially, in the eyes of many fans, become the immediate plug and play starter at Cheetah, for Justin Harrington, in spite of all of that, to grind throughout spring ball and fall camp to put himself in position, not just to sit on the same footing as that freshman All-American, but to overtake him. Man, again, good on that dude. If that's what happens, he's earned it.
Yeah, I still expect there to be a couple of packages where you'll see both those guys on the field. Like I think what you do is you move Deshaun McCall over to Will, you move Danny Stutzman to the mic, or you have Danny Stutzman to Mike, and then you have Justin Harrington, as a Cheetah, or maybe you put Peyton Bowen at the Cheetah or something to that extent. Like there's going to be packages where they kind of mix and match and do a lot of different things, from what I would guess, just from what I've heard over, spring and fall and all that. They have things they want to do package wise. And just like on offense, you totally expect there to be a package of Jackson Arnold out there. And, the funny thing is I was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, dude, the offense changes when he's in there. Like, it's just different. I said, well, how? And they said, man, it's just different. I mean, they couldn't really describe it to me other than they said it just moved differently. Everything just moved differently. And it wasn't like they moved down the field more or anything. It said everything just is different, just in how Lebby calls the game. And, because but Dylan Gabriel and Jackson are on two different players. Obviously they both can run, but Jackson has that kind of gunslinger mentality where he's going to run around and make something with his legs, and then he's going to make a throw that maybe you're going to be kind of upset about, but then when he completes, you're like, hell yes, that was a good throw, right? Like, pray to the football gods that it lands in your receiver's hands sometimes. And I mean, Caleb Williams does that. Obviously, a lot of the younger NFL guys these days do that because that's how they play. They play a lot of that backyard football. So it's just different, I was told. But they did say that guy will take the guy goes, he will take Oklahoma to a national championship before it's all said and done. If he has a defense around him, he will take Oklahoma to a national championship. They thought that highly of Jackson Arnold, which I thought was interesting. But they also think that this team has a chance to be Big 12 champs. So we'll see. We'll do that in the preseason after the pregame podcast on Thursday night, or Friday morning. We'll do the score predictions. But do you think there'll be any surprises on the depth chart before we close this thing out?
Yes, I think there'll be more than a couple surprises. And maybe that's not necessarily on the first team. That could be on the second team. But yes, every year, regardless of how good of a sense we have on the depth chart and what it's going to look like, there are always a couple guys, couple additions here and there that take us by surprise. And yes, I think there will be a couple on both the first team and the second team when it gets released tomorrow. By the way, there's going to be a ton of content over at ouinsider.com throughout the week. Now that we're in season, man, it's going to be flying at you. And we're going to have 2 podcasts a week, the live stream on Wednesday, plenty of recruit interviews and stories, as well as wall-to-wall team coverage throughout the week. So there really is no better time to jump on board with ouinsider.com than right now. And it should make our jobs a little bit easier, Brandon, knowing that Oklahoma is north of 20 commits in the 2024 class as the season gets ready to get underway. But there are several high-profile decisions that are still yet to be made, including Bricks, including Bogonowski, Okoye, I think, you can count anywhere between 10 and 12 players that are still on Oklahoma's board in the 2024 class that have yet to make a decision, or in some cases, Oklahoma's trying to flip from another institution. So we're going to have all of that covered for you. And we're going to be pumping out team content. We're going to be talking Sooner football. We're going to be previewing opponents. We're going to make sure every single day, without exception, you are inundated with all of the best OU football content available.
I agree. I think it's going to be a good time. We got a lot going for you. 60% off right now. $39 gets you a whole year. It's normally $99.95. Can't beat that, but it ends tonight, unfortunately. So
tonight is Monday. If you're listening on Tuesday, you've already missed this.
Monday. Yep, I think that's correct. It ends on the 28th, right? Correct?
Yes.
Am I correct on that? Yep. So there you go. I think if you want to follow us, we'd love to have you join the thousands and thousands of other OU fans that are on OU Insider. The community is growing. We're doing giveaways too, by the way. Each home game, we give away at least 6 tickets. This week, we're giving away 20. So 10 members are going to win throughout all week, are going to win tickets for the OU Arkansas State game. And then the next weekend, when they play SMU, we're going to give them to 3 members. But it's an all season deal. We're going to start doing the giveaways now that we've kind of got our feet settled underneath us on OU Insider. And we're going to try to have that done for you guys, not just throughout the season, but even the off season giveaway to maybe give some concert tickets away. We're going to give away some Best Buy gift cards, some Amazon gift cards, some, Dick's Sporting Goods gift cards, like whatever the case may be, maybe, some Fanatics gift cards. Like we're going to do whatever we can to make sure we take care of you, the member, and show thanks for you all being on OU Insider, because without you guys, we do not have a website. So thank you guys so much for being on there. Remember, right now, 60% off OUinsider.com right now. $39 gets you $100 worth in value in VIP access all year long. Have you covered with the transfer portal, the recruiting, the season, spring game, all of the Champion Barbecue, the Party in the Palace, whatever it is, from this date all the way to this date on 2024, you have access to OU Insider for $39. If you have a big OU fan in your life, give them a gift. Gift them this OU Insider access. So, all right, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooner podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining us and listening to us. I want to thank Ollipop for sponsoring it. And for Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed night.